right? And hopefully next year we will have 1,800. Right? And we would like to, again, acknowledge the presence of the churches that are here, right? So these are like the ones that I got from the list outside. We would like to, so if you are called, please just briefly stand up and we would like to recognize you. Praise Christian Church. There you go. Praise the Lord for you. Right? The City Chapel.
Stand up here is complete.
Okay, Day by Day. Alright. International Christian Fellowship. There you go. Praise the Lord for you. Union CBC, there you go. Brooklyn Evangelical Church. Westchester CBC. Lighthouse Church. Lighthouse of Faith. Praise the Lord for you. And of course, Bible Church International. And we would like to also, they're not part of FSBA, right, of FSBAM NY, but they are here today. The Church Jesus Christ Builder, kapitbahay namin ito sa Queens. Welcome. Okay, so we thank the Lord for, oh, sorry. Of what church? Hindi ko na, the Vice Church. No, because I was, Pastor, I just listed this down to give this to Pastor Ruel. I didn't list down the Vice Church. Sorry, hindi ko sinasadya, tao lang. Right, so we would like, again, we are so thankful for I know that you were blessed this morning with what we have heard. And some of you were still discussing during lunchtime. And I pray that you will have the same excitement as we go on. Right? And again, our speaker is actually a pastor in Chicago. He flew in, but I'm not the one who's speaking to introduce him. So may I request Pastor Kevin to introduce our speaker today.
I hope you guys have had a good time so far. The Lord's spoken to you. So the next speaker is from the Chicagoland area. Actually, I met him after I met you guys, or I mean, my church, Chicago Church International. I haven't met all of you guys yet. So, but I met him during Christmas break, and I was asking him. Actually, I'm Chinese. I don't really know how to pastor a Filipino church, and so can you give me some insights? He's from a Filipino church in Chicago, and the Lord really blessed me with his knowledge and with his passion and with his commitment. And so, Pastor Jake, time is without further ado.
Should we try that at home? Good afternoon again. Well, all right. We love afternoon. That's good. Thank you. I think we have a little, just want to remind myself who to thank here, but you can go on to the next one. Thank you, Pastor Kevin. I just have had great conversations with Pastor Kevin, so it's nice to finally be here to meet all of you. And we've had so many talks about what we would be doing today, and I hope that would be a blessing to all of you. So thank you so much for having us. I'm here with my wife, Lynn, and so she is my navigator and my help. Let's not talk about that. That's not the topic right now. So, and of course, Pastor Jerry, it's very good to meet you and also to be here. I didn't realize that when we arrived, I would be among a lot of people who already know my family. So a little bit about me. Not too much, but I am a botanist, and for those who may not know our family, I'm the 8th pastor in the family, the 3rd generation of pastors, all Baptists, and all the way from my Lolo, Reverend Juan Botanist, who pastored in Iloilo City and Buffalo City, all the way to my father, Pastor Godfrey, who is now a missionary in Iloilo City, and my mom, they send Greetings to all of you. And apparently, many of you know my uncles, many of them also pastors as well. So here we are. Very thankful to be here. I'm thankful that Kevin introduced me with a Cubs hat on. So I feel a little bit at home. I should have worn my Bulls cap. No? Okay. But I was happy to hear a little bit of Pastor Jerry's testimony, even in passing a few minutes ago. I am a PK, and as such, I follow the story, the long line. It's not the godly line, it's the ungodly line. Not Noah, but the other ones. And yet God, by His grace, saves. I was a club DJ, and I rebelled in my teenage years all the way through college. I'm still a big fan of hip-hop music and all that, but it's a little bit different now. Just want to make sure you know that. And when I was in college in Chicago at DePaul University in 2002, that's when God really grabbed a hold of my life. And through that experience, we began to share the gospel with our friends and saw many of them come to Christ, at least 2 or 3 dozen of them. And stuck together for the last 12 years as a community through different ministries. We launched one on the campus. We launched another conference ministry called Regeneration. That was a youth summer conference ministry that we ran for about 10 years. And that was headed by my brother, Godfrey Jr., who, as many of you know, and apparently some folks here have been praying for him as well. He was a youth pastor in Irvine, California, but had a traumatic brain injury and a stroke 3 years ago. And so the ministry also with him seemed to have taken a break. But in several summers, we would sometimes reach 200, 300, 500 kids from Filipino churches all over our denomination, which is the Baptist General Conference, which is what I come out of. But in the end of the day, we're all serving Lord Jesus Christ. And in the last few years now, as a pastor, I've started to use these networks across the country, from Toronto down to California, and actually I've never been up here. And this area of the country has such special significance for me because back when I was in law school, I dropped out after coming to New York on a soul-searching trip, and I listened to Pastor Tim Keller preach to me, because he wasn't preaching to anyone else except me, at Hunter College in Manhattan, in Midtown there. And I felt so convicted about my call as I sat by myself in the back of Hunter College auditorium that I dropped out of law school that night and committed myself to following God's call to pastoral ministry, and here I am. That was 13 years ago. That was 8 years ago. And now I'm pastoring the church my father planted 26 years ago. I've been pastoring there for about 4 years. This is my 5th. There's the Northwest Filipino Baptist Church of Elk Grove Village, just outside Chicago. And we're about to plant on Easter Sunday our church plant in Chicago, which is entirely second generation, multi-ethnic church on the north side of the city. And this conversation that we've been a part of all through those years about the church and its change. I want to bring some of the things that we've gained and that I've also gained to you. I hope that this will be of service to you as you think about what it means to disciple the next generation. So that's my name and that's my email. You can reach me on Facebook if you have follow-up questions, because I realize this is a very limited time. Limited time only, right? Like a sale. But here we can't talk about everything, and yet so many things need to be hashed out in conversation. So that's a little bit about me. And now, actually, I know Pastor Kevin because the senior pastor of the church where he interned in Chicago was part of organizing a group called the HANA Conference. This was in Chicago last 2-3 years. Hispanic and Asian North Americans. About 60 pastors and professors of theology and ministry from across the country have come together for this conversation about what does it mean for us to do ministry as Hispanic and Asian North Americans. And the thing about us is Filipinos are the true Hispanic Asian North Americans. And I was the only Filipino in the room. I said, we look Asian, but we have Spanish last names. Where are all the Filipinos? And that actually is part of the need that we're seeing. There are not many who have really moved into this conversation at that level. And so this coming fall, God has opened a door for us that I'll be pursuing doctoral studies to research into Filipino-American congregations and to understand what is it that God is doing, what is it that He desires, and what is it that we can offer to the work of the Lord around the world. And so this is a conversation that is ongoing, barely just scratching the surface, but I'm glad to be here to have this aspect of the conversation with you. My topic, we can leave it there for 1 second, is to talk about addressing the gaps in discipling the next generation. We can go on to the next slide. Let me just introduce this with a few things. So, for the next one. When we talk about a bridge, I'd like that imagery for this discussion today. We're talking about bridging gaps, but as we do so, the idea of a bridge is to connect two different points. And so that topic was not what I made up, but that was what was given to me by you all at here at Fisbamni. I didn't know what that was either. I wasn't sure if that was German or Portuguese or Fisbamni. But it's a great topic and a great word and image for us to think about as we try to take our ministry from one place to another place. And specifically, we have to ask these questions then, from where to where? That's really important because I think then we start to uncover the real question, where are we now? Not just where do we need to go, what's across the bridge, but where are we starting? From where to where, between what and what else? That's what we need to talk about. And so this conversation has actually been brewing in my mind for several months now. And I hope that some of the things we uncover, even this first question, well, where are we starting? As we desire to bridge these gaps, we realize we're on the other side of a gap. And this is true not only in perhaps many of your churches, but what's true for all of our churches in the network that I've been working in for several years. And there are gaps then between us as leaders. If you're here, I'm guessing you're the pastor, or you're serving God as a leader in the church. And then there is a big gap between us as leaders and those who follow us. There are other gaps as well. There is a gap between the first generation and the second. That's a big gap. I'll talk about that toward the end of my presentation. And then there's an us them. And the reason I want to talk about that, as I will explain later, is because that is still how a lot of the conversation is being. There is us, and then there is them. And I think that actually is part of the issue. But those are some of the gaps. Then there are other gaps that we need to bridge. Do you recognize this bridge? I hope that you would, because I don't know anything about this bridge, but I saw it online. Supposedly it's the George Washington Bridge. It's got a little bit of political notoriety now. This is your bridge, the bridge that connects New Jersey and New York, right? Okay. It's famous now. I didn't know about it in Chicago until recently. Anyway, enough politics. For some of us, the bridge might be like this. You might as well see this in the Philippines, right? This is a footbridge. This is a scary, scary bridge to cross. For some of us, as we do ministry, this is what we're experiencing right now, trying to bridge the gap between the one side and the other. Is it safe? Has anyone done this before and lived? And then there are other bridges like this. This is a scene from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Not a very biblical movie, but he's in the middle, fighting. There are enemies on one side, maybe the first generation. There are enemies on the other side, maybe the second. And we find ourselves as leaders or as pastors often in the middle of a war. Let me pause right there. You know, I was reflecting on this a few weeks ago that, isn't it fascinating how in Ephesians chapter 6, you have a long section the Apostle Paul writing to the church in Ephesus about spiritual warfare. It's the only time he's going to spell it out in those terms, but it is war. What's right before that? Instructions for the Christian home. The Christian marriage as a picture of the gospel. The relationship between parents and children. How we conduct ourselves in the workplace. Right before a long teaching on what it really takes to live out these relationships and bridge these gaps. It takes spiritual warfare. Weapons from the Spirit of God that are beyond this world. You ever think about that? Why is Ephesians 6 about that right after the family? That is what we're dealing with so often. And then this is broken bridge. Many of us may have tried and suffered. You know, as Pastor Jerry was speaking last session about the controvision. I like that, by the way. I might start using that. I'll give you credit. But the controvision, right? They're not visionaries, but they're controvisionaries because they have their own idea of how God told them what you should do. One of my mentors, Pastor Bernie Tance in Chicago, told me, everyone has a wonderful plan for your life. And it's so true. Everyone has a plan for your life. But as a leader, you answer to the Lord. You got to know who you serve and who you do not. It's first things first in the kingdom of God. And many of us, you can go back up. Many of us, the broken bridge is where we're standing right now. As we were singing that song about going through the storm, I thought of John 8, and Jesus says, in the middle of the storm, do not be afraid. Many of us are in a storm or have been in a storm trying to deal with the challenges facing the next generation. And I was once in a storm that I'll talk about as well. And it's true that in that time, we finally let go of our pride and our human effort to say, Lord, I'm going to do it the way you ask me to. Whatever your will, right? Not mine, but your will be done. And so today, I want to talk about the real gaps that are not on the surface, but that are bigger and beneath. And they're the gaps that we see in discipleship because they're actually often, not always, but often the gaps that exist in our own lives. The gaps that we see in ministry, pastors, I would say this very gently since many of you are older than I. But if you're as fallen as I am, then you'll understand this is true. The gaps we see in ministry, the gaps we see in the lives of our children, they're our gaps. It's a biblical idea that even in Exodus 20, the Lord will visit the iniquity of the fathers on their children in the third and fourth generation, but he will show love and mercy for those who love him and keep his commands to 1,000 generations. The gaps are between ourselves and who Christ is. The gaps are between our leadership and not what we want our followers to do, but how they are experiencing us as their leaders. And the gaps are huge between our goals and our results. And so I'm happy to follow up on what Pastor Jerry said this morning. I think we need to really find what God's goals are. His vision. Let me turn to the next slide here. So as we talk about discipleship, here's a question in the next slide that I want you, after we read the scripture, to think about with me first. But turn to Psalm 78 in your Bible. I'll read verses 1 through 7. You will need your Bible for this. Give ear, O my people, to my teaching. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable.